what are PFAS? You may have seen the abbreviation PFAS inside of certain products in shops. You may have seen it while doing a bit of research on the internet or whatever, but PFAS stands for perfluoroalkyl substances. The most common example of a PFAS would be Teflon. Teflon is used inside of non-stick pans, and that is because Teflon, polytetrafluoroethene, is the slipperiest substance known to man. Now, what does a perfluoroalkyl substance actually mean? This just means that all the CH bonds in the substance are replaced with carbon-fluorine bonds. You may think that this is actually a bad thing. This is going to mean that it's more reactive. This is going to mean that it's going to create toxic compounds. However, despite what you think, in chemical terms, the carbon-fluorine bond is actually one of the strongest bonds in the chemical world. It's basically impossible to sort of get a lot of things to actually react with it whatsoever. You're going to need some really, really high temperatures and high pressures to get it to react with absolutely anything. And yeah, that's going to still create toxic compounds, so you're not going to really want to just heat it up to that kind of temperature anyway. So it's pretty much chemically inert unless you really, really try to heat it up as much as you possibly can. And we'll get onto how that could potentially happen inside of your household a bit later on. Now, despite these substances being chemically inert, that is the reason that they can still be pretty harmful to the body, because they don't actually do anything and they just kind of sit there. They don't react with anything. They don't sort of have many mechanisms and stuff. But the mechanism of how they can potentially be bad for the body is because they are structurally quite similar to fatty acids. Now, fatty acids are used inside of cell membranes to make the cell rigid, and it gives it a sort of nice structural shape. Now, PFAS, when they are ingested in the body through certain environmental things and stuff like that. Now, carrier proteins, they're proteins. They don't have emotions. They can't tell the difference between the two things, fatty acids or PFASs and stuff like that. So they're going to carry both of them to where they need to be. Now, the fatty acid needs to be used inside of a cell membrane to make it more sort of structurally sound. And a PFAS has no business being there, but it's going to end up being put there anyway because it's structurally similar and the carrier protein can't tell the difference. So that's going to make the cell less structurally sound. And if you have too many PFAS in the body, if all your fatty acids were suddenly replaced with PFAS chemicals, you would just probably die because the cells will not be structurally sound enough to actually function. So now you understand the mechanism of how PFAS works, or more rather the mechanism of how it doesn't actually work and is incredibly chemically inert. What does this mean for you? What should you do to get rid of PFASs in your environment? Should you stop using non-stick pans? While that can potentially get rid of some of your PFAS, that is not necessarily the case. That is not necessarily the best option for you to actually do and go through with that, because the amount of PFAS that is in your body, there is going to be a negligible amount of it that is actually from the Teflon non-stick pans. They're manufactured in a pretty sensible way. While, yes, they can pose a concern, they're quite well bound to the actual non-stick pan. And unless you damage it, then it's not really going to sort of be in your body that much. There's still obviously going to be PFAS in your body, but it's not going to be the only way that PFAS gets into your body. PFAS is found in your tap water. There are polyfluoroalkyl substances inside of your tap water. That is because the people who make the Teflon pans, the people who make the PFAS substances, people who make the Teflon pans, or the people who make the PFASs for the people that use it in clothes and stuff, because there are other uses for PFAS that are not just Teflon, obviously. It's those environmental sort of wastage that is the main way that PFAS is in our body. PFAS is in our tap water, and that is the main concern that you and I should probably be concerned with. These PFASs are forever chemicals, meaning they stay in your body for a very long time because they just don't react with anything. They don't sort of degrade. They're not metabolized in any way, shape or form, because no enzymes know how to sort of deal with that stuff because it's containing a bunch of fluorines. Normally that would mean it's more reactive, but CF bonds are actually incredibly strong. So your enzymes just kind of go like this and it just sort of leaves it there. And it's hard to tell the carrier proteins, as I say, they cannot tell the difference between PFASs and fatty acids. So yeah, it just causes a big issue. And it's not even the Teflon pans that really are the big cause of PFAS ingestion. But if getting rid of your non-stick pans is something you're considering, you also need to consider the opportunity cost. what's going to happen if you don't use a Teflon pan? You're going to have to use more of any sort of oil or frying material so that it doesn't stick. Something like such as butter, lard, or oil, they're all options that you're going to have to use if you use a sticky pan, I suppose. Obviously, I still use butter and lard and olive oil and stuff like that when I'm frying something, even though I have a non-stick pan available to me, but I'll have to use much more if I'm using a sticky pan, I suppose. Restaurants don't even use Teflon pans. It's not actually considered necessary for what the restaurants do for them to use Teflon pans. But that means they're going to have to use more of whatever kind of frying substance they're using. Now, because I personally perceive that butter and lard and stuff is more stable chemically, therefore less likely to oxidize and stuff like that, so it's going to be better for me when I'm actually frying in it. Now, while putting unsaturated fats may be better for you when they're not heated and not fried and not used for that kind of purpose, saturated fats are probably better for you when you're actually using them for frying and stuff like that. But you have to trust what oil the restaurants that you may eat out in are actually going to use. And obviously you have to trust your own instinct as to what oil or butter or lard you're going to use when you're frying and what that's actually going to mean for you. So there's an opportunity cost there as well, because frying is not the best cooking method. It does get rid of some nutrients. It can cause things to oxidize, can cause free radicals. But yeah, that's just a whole opportunity cost thing that you have to consider when it comes to Teflon pans. My opportunity cost example with this is I have fried eggs every single morning, and I use a non-stick pan. It's kind of old, so it's going to end up becoming sticky eventually, but as of now, it still works well. It means I don't have to use a heinous amount of like frying material and stuff like that. I'm still probably going to use that Teflon pan. However, what I'm not going to do is I'm never going to buy a Teflon pan ever again from a store. I'm going to continue to use sticky pans, the pans that require more frying material as I get older, because it will reduce the demand. If everyone does this, if everyone sort of understands what I'm trying to say here and stops buying Teflon pans, then it will reduce the demand for Teflon pans. That's going to mean that less of the PFAS is going to be in our tap water, because less Teflon pans are being produced, therefore less environmental wastage. And you kind of see where I'm going with this, right? It's not really the Teflon pans that's the issue. It's actually the wastage that's from making this stuff that's the issue, that's in our tap water. So when I'm older, when I'm like living in my own house or something, as I have a goal for the future, I'm not going to be using Teflon pans because I don't want to have to buy loads of Teflon pans, because I don't want to contribute to the demand. I don't want to have to contribute to the sort of wastage that exists that's going to mean that other people on the earth have to deal with the fact that there's more PFAS in their tap water. If everyone does this, it will have a significant effect on the amount of PFAS concentration that's in our environment. And I think that's a very powerful message personally. But I'm not going to stop using Teflon pans because the actual Teflon pan usage has such a negligible effect on the amount of PFAS in your body. But it's the environmental toxins that are the real killer in this situation. So just using the current Teflon pan you have is okay, because you've already bought it before you've seen this sort of message that I'm bringing forth to you right now, and you might as well make the most out of its sort of admitted practical uses. But what I don't want you to do, and what I know I won't do, is ever buy Teflon pans again to reduce the demand, and that's going to mean that there's going to be no more PFAS in our environment, hopefully, along the line in the future. And I consider when I'm in the future that any sort of slight oxidation products that I'm going to get from frying something in more butter or more lard or more oil is better than the fact that there's going to be more Teflon or more PFAS in general inside of my environmental systems, inside of the environment, inside of tap water and stuff like that. I'm going to consider that is a better choice to make for me than continuing to use Teflon pans and using less frying material. So yeah, that's just how I personally perceive it, but I've still got a bit more to say. There are a few chemicals that are perfluoroalkylated that are actually banned. PFOA, perfluorooctanoic acid, that is a chemical that is banned for being related to causing things like cancer and diabetes and stuff like that. That has been phased out of manufacture. Now maybe PFAS and stuff will be next. I think they should be phased out of manufacture because clearly the wastage that's produced, not the product itself, but the wastage that's produced at such a high quantity that gets into the systems and stuff, that's not good for us as humans whatsoever. It's not good for the ecosystem either. It's not good for the environment in general, the animals and stuff. You have to think about everything when it comes to these sort of processes. You have to think of the fishes. We eat the fish, so now there's going to be PFAS in the fish as well, because all this sort of waste is going to be dumped into freshwater systems and stuff, rivers. So you have to think about all these things, and you have to think about the fact that if these ecosystems are degrading because there's more PFAS in them, and loads of other chemicals as well, that's going to be a detrimental impact for humans, because we just don't have as much nature on the planet as we did before. There's loads of different avenues to go down when it comes to chemicals such as PFAS and BPA and everything like that. But a tip I can give you, if you're going to use Teflon pans for the rest of your life and you consider that opportunity cost to be better than using more frying material, or you currently have one and you're going to wait till that sort of becomes sticky to just only continue to get sticky pans ever again for the rest of your life, is to never ever heat a Teflon pan higher than 260 degrees Celsius. Never leave a Teflon pan just on the hob with no oil or anything like that, with nothing in it. Always have something in it, whether it's oil, whether it's your eggs, whether it's your meal chicken, whatever it is. Always have something in the pan, because otherwise it's going to be easier to heat, and if it gets to more than 260 degrees Celsius, that's when the toxic products, as I mentioned earlier, are going to start to be released. Now, as I say, it's all an opportunity cost. You make your choice, but I'm just here to give you the knowledge so you can make a more informed choice. With that, I recommend subscribing for more content like this, and have a good day.